Hey, welcome to Neuro Digest, your podcast by Andy Speaks for Special Needs Persons Africa, with me, your host, Sylvia Muramuchaba, Dr. Akinsiku, where we learn, share, support, engage, and just interact with persons with neurodevelopmental disabilities, caregivers, parents, stakeholders, and also professionals, so that we can light up some light on information and just hear of all the challenges, hear of all the successes and the triumphs and the things and the do's and the don'ts and the signs and the symptoms and everything about neurodiversity and neurodevelopmental disabilities. And this will be a very long session, as we will be having deep conversations with different people from different parts of the continent and the world, just to raise awareness. As mentioned, this is brought to you by Andy Speaks for Special Needs Persons, our organization that champions for the inclusion and mainstreaming of neurodevelopmental disabilities in focus with education, health, social protection. And we are hoping that we will be able to shed some light and kill the stigma that is associated with neurodiversity, and at the same time demystify some of the myths that we have going around. And especially here in our continent of Africa, we have so many of those. Trust you me, I have had so many stories as to why, who has what. As a caregiver, I am a mother of 3, and 2 of my children are neurodiverse. We have baby A and baby B, both on the spectrum of autism, 2 very different individuals, both having learning challenges, both suffering from epilepsy. And the last boy also has the extra comorbid of ADHD, which we are navigating. Like I said, navigating this journey is something that is quite interesting, because every day there is something new that you just have to figure it out. So that's why we are here, to have candid, honest conversations, caregivers to caregiver to professional, how our days are, and the challenges that we face and how we feel, just to let it out, because we never get to talk to people, and not many people really get to understand it. So it is a platform. Also, the neurodiverse individuals who want to at least come and shed some light, especially the verbal ones, we would really appreciate, speaking as a caregiver, to just know how actually is it, what we see on the outside versus what is actually going on in your soul, in your mind, in your whole being, how the environment is actually factually making you feel, just the full shebang. Those are the conversations we want to have, because trust you me, once one gets the diagnosis, it feels like a moment of blankness. Like you see when in memes, when you get someone going quiet, then all you can hear is the crickets and darkness. That is how it feels the minute we get the diagnosis, because personally, that was the very first time I ever heard the word autism. So we will be talking a lot about autism, because, well, hey, it's my specialty, raising 2. And we'll be talking about convulsions, we'll be talking about epilepsy, challenges in learning, schooling, day-to-day life, partners, relationships, you name it. So this is your place for that. So first things first, what is autism spectrum disorder, as we commonly call it, autism? So autism is an umbrella term that is used for developmental conditions that are marked by persistent, ongoing challenges with social communication and interaction, as well as restricted and repetitive behavior patterns, interests, and activities. Autism is normally related to challenges that range from mild to severe and always vary from person to person. I can tell you that for free. My 2 kids are like totally different. So everyone on the autism spectrum has their own unique challenges and different levels of abilities and disabilities. And some of the characteristics that you will see in autism include language differences. This will involve delayed language, loss of words, repeating words, which is called echolalia, and challenges that you might find a child can label pictures and still struggles in saying what it is they want, yet they can actually call out the names of what it is. Pronoun errors, not knowing to say he, she, and even positioning here, where, what, and also lack of and a lot of using of gestures in place of language and for communication. That under languages. Then we have social differences, some of which are inconsistent use of eye contact. Some might look at you in the eye, some might not, some might partially look at you, and other times not. Then you have difficulties interacting with peers, which varies also. They're more comfortable with people they're familiar with, and also find it very difficult, especially just getting it and ticking it off with strangers. And it takes time for them to just be okay with you around. So, and some may prefer also to play alone when they're in their childhood, and you put them where they're supposed to be playing with other children. They prefer to be alone and just play with their own toys and things that they are comfortable with and familiar with. And they would also have challenges with conversations, like they're not interested. And just, when you're having language difficulties, having a conversation is really, really tasking, or it becomes complex for them. And then we have repetitive actions, which we call a lot of it. Most of the times you find that persons on the autism spectrum get to develop a way that calms them down when the environment is very, very overwhelming. So they tend to pick an action that they repeat or something they hang on to or get so attached to, but it gives them comfort for them to be okay in the environment. So you find that they may insist on doing things the same way, and they really struggle with change. So you need to take your time to just, when you're about to change something, introduce it way ahead and inform them, and then do it, and then expect for them to have challenges, and just be there for them at that point as they are transiting. Then you find that if you give a child a toy, they will play with that toy in a very, very, very specific way. Like if it's a car, they might either be riding it in reverse, moving it from the same one point to another. Then you find some of the things that we see is like arranging things in the same order. Like if it's their toys, they want it in a specific way, specific colors following each other. And if you change it up, they really, really get agitated. So they like their things their way. So this is part of their obsessive behavior. And then we have the fact that they prefer specific toys. And this means they might not want to go anywhere without like a teddy bear, specific teddy bear. There is one. Maybe it is a blanket. Maybe they always want to wear a specific color. They always want to have their shoes in a particular way. So there is just that attachment. And when you go back to now repetitive actions, more of it for calming themselves, which we call steaming, you find the rock bite their fingers, or when they get too overwhelmed, they're those ones who get into self-injurious behavior, which is like banging your head. There are those who throw themselves on the ground, which is just their way of expressing their dissatisfaction. And this is some of the behaviors that you will see. And then you might find your children walking on their toes, or just spinning around in circles, or just pacing about. So these are some of the things that you look out for when it comes to autism. And then there is sensory differences. Of our 5 senses, you find that some might be hyper and some might be hypo, in terms of they might be too sensitive, or might have such low sensitivity that it just feels like it does not exist. Like, for example, for my baby A, his pain threshold is just so high. And he's the loudest screamer, yet when someone else makes noise, he will be saying it's making noise, yet number one in screaming around the house, but he doesn't even hear it. And then we have texture. They become very picky eaters. You find that there's some food textures they cannot tolerate. So try and be understanding and find an alternative replacement to get the same nutrition, but then give them something they're okay with. Then they will be sensitive to sound, as I said. So you might need to invest in earmuffs for those who are very sensitive to sound. So if you see your child closing their ears, just know that they're very, very sensitive. The level of sensitivity also can be gauged if you go to an audiologist to check it out. And then there are things like shaving hair, washing hair, cutting nails. They just will not be comfortable. I know we have good days and bad days. Like that days will be cool with going to the barber shop. There are days it's a whole fight of like half an hour to just get the hair cut. So for those ones, try and also make those consistent for such services as either time-wise, and you tell them in advance that we're going to the barber. And when they are at the barber, when you get there, let them know this is the barber shop. We want you to look neat, so we're going to have to cut your hair, so that they get to also understand why we're doing what we're doing, to make it easier for them to just go through it. And so teach them, sometimes they might say no, which is okay. If you have a partially verbal or very verbal child, which is very, very okay and acceptable. When they say no, respect that, and just give them the time to process. Then there is the sensory of hand flap. Then there is the hand flapping, jumping and spinning and rocking, as I mentioned earlier. So this is just the entire spectrum. So for the diagnosis of autism, you find that the doctors will be looking at all these angles: the language difference, the social differences, repetitive actions, sensory differences. So as a parent, also the milestones, we find that they might not achieve their milestones at the normal timelines that other children do, be it in speaking, be it in walking, steady of the neck control, their fine motor skills, gross motor skills. Motor skills are just generally the movement, from when you want to reach out, when you coordinate, this is how I pick a glass, this is how I eat. So those are the things you look out for in a child to get to know if they're on the spectrum. And if you suspect that you can see any of this, then you can go and see the doctor to be able to give you a diagnosis. Developmental pediatricians are there. I have the psychologist, and we then move on to the other one, which is ADHD. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is very common with childhood and in childhood. And over time, you can be able to regulate, you can be able to work around it. And trust you me, I'm still having first hand with this one, and it can really, really fluctuate. There is the dietary intervention that you look at. There is the behavior and cognitive behavior therapy that you can also have to help with that. And for me, I find medication being the last resort where necessary, and if not very necessary, or rather, it's always advisable to just try and manage things until the point when, okay, well, we need meds. That's my disclaimer, my personal view. But it is something that you can use medication to help, and these medicines have to be very, very prescribed, controlled, and expect side effects. I'm attesting from experience. Expect side effects. So before you get a diagnosis, before you get a medical prescription from the doctor, please ask what side effects you may experience, because it can hit you bad if you're not mentally prepared for some of the side effects. So just know that and be ready for it. Then we have Down syndrome is the other one that we'll be talking about, which is also called as trisomy 21, which is a genetic disorder caused by the presence of all or part or a third copy of chromosome 21. And there are several characteristics in the physical growth of someone with Down syndrome on their features, which is either mild to moderate and severe, and also it has some effect on intellectual abilities. Then the other thing, when it comes to Down syndrome, you really have to be very keen with the heart, with the senses, that is the eyes, have them checked out, have your echo done for the heart, have your ears of the child checked, just to be sure and in good time, because chances of having a hole in the heart are there, which might require surgical intervention. So it's very good to just, the minute you notice, because the good thing with Down syndrome, okay, I'm saying good thing because invisible disabilities can really be a struggle. For Down syndrome, the physical features are there: the bridge on the nose, the palm, the distance of the thumb, the foot. You have the nose. You have the eyes slanting. So some of the signs and symptoms that you can actually see. And even to get more information on these things, actually, you can go onto our web portal, which is a device. It's a web assistive device to help caregivers get more information. I'm just doing the introduction. So you can go on to www.specialneedsresourcehub.org. Let me say that again: www.specialneedsresourcehub.org. We have broken all this down, all the the developmental disabilities, the neurodiverse conditions, plus the comorbid conditions. Comorbid conditions are coexisting conditions, illnesses that actually go hand in hand with some of the neurodevelopmental disabilities. And it is important for you to know this so that you know how to balance and how to handle it, so that one is not affecting the other. Because most of the time, 80%, like for all of these major ones, ASD, ADHD, Down syndromes, and cerebral palsy, you find there is the comorbid condition of epilepsy. So now let me dive into cerebral palsy. So the CP is a disorder which you find abnormalities or damage in the baby's brain during infancy or early childhood, permanently affecting their body movement and muscle coordination. So cerebral refers to the brain and palsy refers to physical disorders. So like autism, CP has like five types, depending on which area of your brain is affected or during development. And you find the abilities also vary and in severity, depending on the same, which part. So you will find those who it's only motor that is affected, either severely that they're on a wheelchair, that they cannot feed by themselves, and they don't have any coordination. You can find those ones who can walk, have challenges a bit with talking and a bit of movement. They're very functional, no intellectual challenges, and they are able to think, go to school, and perform. So you can read on more about cerebral palsy also on our web portal. Then we have epilepsy. So there is a difference between convulsive disorder and epilepsy. So when you notice, and convulsions are of two types. There is febrile convulsions, and then there is the convulsions that are just triggered by something else. Okay, the ones that become epileptic. So the difference of the two, which is just the magnetic activities in the brain becoming a bit too much, then you get a fit. So if you have very high temperatures and it causes a fit or convulsion, that is called febrile convulsions. Then you have the other convulsions that just happen. Like maybe you had head trauma, or maybe you have an illness and it just triggers convulsions. But then when you start getting very many convulsions that are not provoked, unprovoked convulsions, now that condition is what we call epilepsy. So with epilepsy, you find it exists a lot with many of the convulsive disorders. And a lot with the neurodevelopmental disorders. And yes, it is a convulsive disorder. So the one thing that I am very keen when it comes to epilepsy, once you notice it, of course, consult the doctor. And when it happens, for all parents, when it happens, there are few key things you need to do. As it happens, get the person comfortable by turning them to the side, making sure there is nothing covering their face, their airwaves, they can breathe naturally and easily. There is no tension like tight clothes, etc. Give them freedom so that they can just fit, the movements, the jerks that come with it are on their own. Don't try to restrict them kindly. That is very dangerous. Don't put anything in their mouth. I know in Africa there was, when we were growing up, for sure, I remember being told, put a spoon in the mouth. Please do not put a spoon in someone's mouth when they're having a convulsion. Kindly do not. 2, also, you count the time from when they start getting a convulsion. And then once you make sure if it is above 5 minutes, the next thing you need to do is call an ambulance and get the person to the hospital as soon as possible. Because one thing you need to know when you're having convulsion, that means the oxygen levels are going low and it is not getting to the brain as sufficient as it's supposed to be. So it is endangering the person's life the more and the longer the convulsions stay. After the convulsions, you need to make sure the person does not stand up immediately. They might just wake up by reflex and just want to stand up. Calm them down. Assure them they're okay. Make sure them you're there for them. Ask them how they're feeling, because when they fall, maybe their head would be injured, and just ask how they're feeling and let them be calm until when they regain consciousness fully and they can be stable enough, and observe them. But now for our children, the other thing you watch out for when they have a convulsion and then they either pass stool or they pee, please take them to the doctors. Please urgently take them to the doctors, because that means that they need medical attention. They might require oxygen. So, yeah, that is epilepsy. And those are the key neurodevelopmental disabilities and disorders that we at Andy Speaks for Special Needs Persons Africa champion for and want to raise awareness for, so that we can have a better generation. We can have early diagnosis and early intervention, because early intervention is what will help us be able to support our children better. So that is it for today. It was just basically introducing you to Neurodigest, your one-stop conversation support, link, share, and engagement on matters neurodevelopmental disability and neurodiversity. So you can hit us up, send us a DM on our socials, Andy Speaks for Special Needs Persons. We have a Facebook group, Andy Speaks for on Twitter, Andy Speaks on IG, and for our resource page, so that you don't miss anything and you get enough tips of how to manage and how to link up with other people. Please do follow our Special Needs Resource Hub and go onto our web portal. There is more information about the conditions I have touched on in details, in depth, and supportive. What do you do more on that? And things you can do from home, things you can learn, and manuals to help you with the same. For the caregivers, I hope this was beneficial for those who feel maybe they would like to be checked out or have suspected that maybe they could be on the spectrum. You know a bit more about it. I have been your host, Dr. Sylvia Moramu Chabo Akinsiku, here on Neurodigest. Until next time, ta-ta.